Howdy music lovers, Tom from Blakgraz here. Welcome to another episode of Guitar and Gab. And then in this video, we're going to talk about some studio experience I had and a really interesting video by Rick Beato and another fella who I did not catch his name, talking about working in the studio or recording things yourself like we do. So let's get right to it. Howdy music lovers, Tom from Blakgraz with another episode of Guitar and Gap. Thanks so much for tuning in. In this episode we are spotlighting Chosette. Chosette is a very special one of just a few, I think like 13 or 14 guitars that custom built. This is Vaughn Shannon's work, custom built out of Austin, Texas. And she is actually in the pictures that I use to promote the music a lot. And she's also one of my favorite guitarists to play on stage just because she is such a centerpiece. She gets people's attention.
They're all your favorite.
They are all my favorites, but she has a very unique look. They all do, actually. That's true. The Wolf and everything, even Stella and Betty. Anyway, the point is this one in particular has an unusual look compared to most just regular electric guitars that you see, and so people often are drawn to it right away. It reminds me of when I used to play in an Eagles tribute a long time ago, and as soon as you pull out the double neck, people knew that you were going to play Hotel California. Well, as soon as I pick up Chosette, people perk up and they notice what I'm doing on stage. Now it's funny too because I play as a solo artist without a band, but it sounds like there's a band. Basically I record all the stuff myself, which is what we're going to talk about. Not just recording studio versions, but live tracks for backing, so it sounds like a band. What a live track is versus what a studio track that gets released for radio play. But it reminds me of that because what was I going to say? Basically, I can't remember what I was going to say now.
The different guitars, backing tracks. Well, you have 6 guitars on stage. Because you record everything yourself.
Yeah, but I feel really silly. I apologize. I had a thought and I wanted to share it. Anyway,
it'll come back.
So I'll remember. Basically, Chosette is important because it gives, like the other guitars, a specific tone. Especially, that's what it was. When you set up on stage and you have 6 guitars, people know you're not faking it, right? It sounds like there's a full band, but they don't see it, so they think, it's just karaoke or whatever, right? But then they see you set up 6 guitars. They start to think, why would he go to that much trouble to set up all those guitars if he's not going to play them, right?
Well, that and not covers, because nobody doing covers would play 6 guitars or set up 6 guitars.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, you could.
I haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it, but you could set up 6 different guitars for your Van Halen guitar, and then your Aerosmith guitar, and then your Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then your Journey guitar, and all that stuff, or even your Santana guitar. You could do that, but the playing originals definitely makes it different. So before I go much further down that path, I want to give a shout out to Angry Troll. They are Elkin, North Carolina brewing company that is having us back again. It was a joy to play there. We met our dear friends Beth and Jeff and Dustin and a whole bunch of their friends, and we're gonna do a chicken stew again this summer, but it's not gonna be a chicken stew because you do chicken stews in the winter time. We're just gonna have a grill at Jeff's place and another outdoor party that I'm gonna play because Jeff's gonna help me fix Rufus some more. I just volunteered him, but I did offer to play. But he also has to cut the grass if we're going to do this. So don't worry, Beth, I'm working on it. We'll get him to cut the grass by the time we get there. All right, so in terms of different guitars, now let's first start because I wanted to talk about what I saw with Rick Beato, which was basically, you know, what amateurs don't realize about tone or finding the right tone for guitar. Let's back that up a little bit. What's the difference between a live recording, a backing track for a live show versus a track that's basically going to be a finished studio version of a song that will be played on the radio? Well, if you're mixing for live, you're going to have certain instruments much louder than other instruments. For instance, you know, vocals are a mid-range instrument, and people always need to hear the vocals because they need to know what the story is and what the main melody is. But if you have guitar too loud at a live show, well, then it conflicts. Those are the same frequencies. Electric guitar, acoustic guitar are typically mid-range instruments. And so when you're mixing live, you don't want the guitars to drown out the vocals, because then the vocalist will complain they can't hear, or people will complain they can't hear the vocals and what's being said, what song is being sung. Despite the fact that I believe guitar should be the centerpiece of every song anyway. However, that's in a live setting. And so what typically live you do is you have the kick drum and the bass the loudest, because in a live setting people want to feel the music, and the kick drum is all that low end as well as a little bit of rounded high end to give it click, right? But not too much, and not much in the way of mids. And then bass guitar is also, it lives down in the low end. You don't, unless you're doing some slapping stuff, you know, or Stanley Clark stuff with the double-handed stuff, you're mostly down in the lower register, and so it's going to be EQ'd for down there, which is not where people really hear what they feel it more than they hear it. I mean, you hear it, but most of the frequencies that are built for bass or kick drum are, sometimes the waves are like 6 feet long. So one single sine cosine is 6 feet long, which means that you're not really hearing, especially if you're standing up close. If you're right on top of the speaker, you're just feeling things bouncing around you. You're not actually feeling the full wavelength yet.
Like a heartbeat.
Yeah. So that's a big part of the consideration. So guitar on a live setting is mixed lower, and then when important melodic hooks come up, you know, or when there's a guitar solo, then the guitar is introduced with more volume, as long as the vocalist is not still trying to tell a story. And one of the rules on stage for a live band is follow the lead guy no matter what. So if he sings the bridge at the wrong time, play the bridge. Don't just keep playing what you have rehearsed. Follow the lead guy, whether he's right or wrong, because you want to support what he's doing. He's trying to work the crowd, maybe just made a mistake, or maybe he's extending a song and is going to tell you to bring it back around to, you know, another verse and another chorus because people are having such a good time with that song. That stuff happens. So when it comes to mixing that environment, right, because their job is to create shape sound on stage, your job as a sound man is to amplify that sound, that creation that they make, not to change it and produce it, not to be a producer, just to be a sound engineer that makes it bigger and makes it fit the room, because obviously each room has certain frequencies that it prefers. Some rooms have lots of hard surfaces, and some rooms are really ringy, or some rooms have a lot of high end happening because of angles, right? Or some rooms really absorb low end, and so you have to really push the low end because for whatever reason there's carpet or there's stuff that's absorbing the low end. It just depends. That's the job of a live sound engineer. They are not the producer. It's the band's job to shape the sound. It's his job to make it fit the room. That's my opinion. A lot of folks probably might disagree, but I'll tell you what, whenever I ran sound, I always got compliments that I was the best sound man that every band I ever did sound for, that's the best they ever sounded. So with that in mind, when you record a track like I do in the camper, I think in those terms. I'm going to be making a backing track that I need to sound like a live band. So the drums are going to be louder, the bass is going to be louder, the guitars, the rhythm guitars are going to be a little bit softer. I'm going to leave room for the vocals. If there's backing vocals, they're going to be spread out because I do mix in stereo and I do perform in stereo, so I can do that. And that actually helps with the illusion of making it sound like a real band. So then I'll have some vocals over here, but never right in center, so that when I'm singing lead, boom, that's where it sits and lives, as if I were being mixed by a live engineer. So now I'll switch over to studio version, right? When I mix for the studio version, I still do the stereo stuff, and I still try to have the bass and the drums more present, but now I'm going to introduce the guitars more, unless there's keyboard, because often guitars get in the way of keyboard, or if the keyboard's just a splash here or there, that it depends on which one, because those are both instruments that can exist in the mid-range area. Keyboard can be all the way, the whole frequency, all the way super low, mid, all the way up to super high, right? So it depends on which part, where you're playing on the keyboard. But if it is in the middle and it's presenting a chord that's important, then I'll try to mix the guitar and the keyboard accordingly, matching, or one or the other down below, depending on what emphasis I want. Do I want it to be more keyboard oriented, or do I want it to be more guitar oriented? With the vocals all sitting on top of all of everything else that happens, percussion, bass, keyboard, guitar, everything, even special effects. Vocals always sit on top of it. Now here's the catch though. The guitars, the vocals have to sit above it, but still as part of. And that's where the frequencies of your voice, or the voice that you're recording, become really important. You must recognize where it sits with the other instruments around it. You want it to be louder, but not so loud that it sounds like the vocals are super loud and the music is back here, and it doesn't make any sense to whoever's listening to it. Why am I listening to this voice with barely any music behind it? It doesn't sound like it's part of the song. You want to make, and see, that's part of the optical, the audio illusion that you create when you do a studio version or when you do a live version. You still have to make it sound like it's a band and that they are together. For instance, on a lot of my recordings, I do a lot of, just kind of making noises or talking in between parts. Those parts I actually back down in volume. When it comes back to singing the verse or the chorus, then I bring up that volume, because I want it to seem like I'm off the mic and I'm talking to an audience, or I'm talking to the band. And audio-wise, that's exactly what occurs. It feels like it's part of what's occurring in that moment of recording.
The atmosphere, almost, the energy around it all.
Sure, the atmosphere. You're creating this environment of, oh, this is part of the song. It's not separate from the song. Okay, so now go over back to Rick Beato's. Hi, security is in the house. Rascal, are we secure? Is everything secure?
He was busy on his hide chewing on it. Now he's kind of...
Everything's secure. He's checking. Okay. How's it look? Everything good? We're safe? All right. Thank you for checking. So now go and discuss Rick Beato's video, which talked about, he brought in this famous session player who has played on all kinds of records and been part of all kinds of successful projects, and made his living, coming into studios as a guitar player and providing anything that people needed. Any kind of sound, any kind of guitar playing, was just that talented. And you see in a studio the efforts that are taken, that it is required to capture the actual sound of what a musician, a guitarist, is actually trying to produce, or especially when it comes to what strings you use, what guitar you use, what pickups you use, the signal that goes out to an amp head. Then that amp head is wired in the studio. It's wired to a speaker that's in an isolation booth, and then the microphone that goes in front of the isolation in the isolation booth in front of the amp, and not just in front of the cabinet, but in front of the cone in the cabinet. And where you place it on the cone is important. So if the microphone's smack in the middle, it's going to sound really bright. The further out you go towards the edge of this round speaker cone that moves like this to create the sound, the warmer, the more less high end it has. So now what you'll see in his video is you really have to comprehend shaping air, right? Which microphone you use, where you place it, what cabinet you use compared to the head that you're using, compared to the string that you're using, compared to the guitar, compared to the player. Because I know a long time ago in one of my videos I talked about the story I'd heard about Bonnie Raitt recording in a studio next to Eric Clapton. She's a huge fan of Eric Clapton, so she ran in and wrote down all of his settings on his guitar rig because she used all the same gear that he does because she's such a fan. And she set everything exactly the same and started trying to play it, and she could not get it to sound the way he sounds. Well, that's because he's Eric Clapton, she's Bonnie Raitt.
Well, she had a different guitar, most likely.
No, she had the same Fender Strat.
What about different guitar strings? Strings can play a different sound.
Well, I don't know. They didn't say that in the interview. I don't know. The most important thing about that story is that they are two different players. No matter how good you are and whether you use the exact same gear, like a tribute band, you buy all the same gear as Journey or Van Halen or AC/DC or whoever it is that you're trying to emulate. It doesn't matter. You are not them. No matter how hard you try to play the notes exactly the way they played them, and you practice for years and you get it just exactly right, and it's exactly the same way. It is not, and it will never sound exactly the same because you are not them. You do not hit the strings or pick things the way they do it. You do it the way you do. You get close, but it's never exactly the same. And the interesting thing for me, for as long as I've been listening to some songs that I'm fans of, like these old bands, you can tell right away, and Journey's a really good example of it. I could tell immediately when it was the new singer for Journey and not Steve Perry. The guy, there's a young fella, I guess from the Philippines or from, I forget where he's from, really talented.
Phenomenal, yeah.
He was amazing.
Very humble, too.
Nice fella. All the videos that I saw about him, he was just super talented. He could sound like Axl Rose, he could sound like Steve Perry, he could sound like AC/DC, and they picked him up and he just exploded on stage. And it was not what they expected, but it really helped kind of revive the energy of the band. Because the thing about Journey was, they were already a famous band without Steve Perry. They brought Steve Perry in, and then they just kind of took off. It became its own thing. So this young kid re-recorded at the request of Journey their songs with him doing it because he was so charismatic and energetic live that they wanted to capture that and be able to reintroduce these amazing songs to their fans with this new singer. The first time I ever heard one of them sing him singing the same song and then re-recording it, I knew instantly it wasn't Steve Perry. You could tell immediately, even though he can make his voice sound almost exactly like Steve Perry. And
it sounded good, but it wasn't.
It was great. Yeah. It wasn't good.
That's what I'm saying.
It sounded great. The band sounded great. The recording was perfect. Everything was perfect, but it wasn't Steve Perry. You could hear the nuance. Now, here's another good example, right? Line 6 used to do this thing where on their website you could go and listen with headphones to a audio sample of a Fender Twin played with a Strat and just straight Fender Twin clean sound, right? Boom. They play a chord and they'd play something. And then they'd put it through one of their products, like the Veta or the Spider or the Helix now, and I guess the Stadium thing, which I haven't even looked at yet because I'm still busy trying to figure out the Helix. So you'd listen to the audio tracks, right? And it was really hard to tell the difference because the Line 6 has gotten extremely good at making their amp modeling sound just like or better than the original amps. But there was, and I know this for a fact, when I listened to the Fender Twin, I could pick out the Fender Twin versus the Line 6 sound. And the reason wasn't because the Fender Twin sounded better. It was because there was one of the tone qualities of a Fender Twin is something that I just can't stand. I cannot stand this little idiosyncrasy, and I can't even name it. It's just something about the way when you hit the strings and the tone comes through, especially when it's being recorded, drives me nuts. It's just not enough of, it doesn't give something. And I know there's probably a lot of guitar players, if you're watching this, you're like, Fender Twins are the bomb, dude. How can you bust on a Fender Twin? Well, the Line 6 file was better. It sounded better. And it didn't have that one quirk that I really can't stand. But the Fender Twin original sound did. Now, remind you, they used the same guitar, the same chords, the same strike, the same microphone placement, just different amp model software, and then the actual amp. And I picked it up immediately. I knew exactly which one it was. Because I just can't stand that about Fender Twins.
And you have a Fender.
I have a, no, it's not the guitar, it's the amp.
Guitar,
Fender
Fender
Twin is an amp.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying you do have a Fender. You're not bashing Fender.
So needless to say, there are idiosyncrasies that you can pick up that you notice, right? So when you watch Rick Beato's video, you see how much work goes into just getting the guitar to sound the way you want it to sound. Okay, well, nowadays, I plug into my big computer with an old Line 6 interface, right, that has a microphone and a line instrument input on it, go into GarageBand, and I have the Helix software, so sometimes I use that, but often I don't. Often I will just fine-tune the amp modeling sounds that are in GarageBand. I don't even use an amp. I don't need to. And I'm only confident in doing that because I've spent years working in studios paying tons of money to get drum sounds, bass tone, guitar tones, right vocal effects, and walking away completely frustrated and all that money gone. All the money that I had saved up, thousands of dollars to be able to go in and record, and it just didn't sound the way I needed it to sound. It didn't come across the way I wanted it to come across. So I'm watching Rick Beato's video, I'm just like, oh God, I've been there. Oh no, I can't, I don't need to see this. Because everything they did, and they pointed out, and the point of the video was to show amateur guitarists what goes into getting a really good tone, especially in a studio or even just for live performance. That has been made completely, that whole process has been made completely obsolete by all of the amazing companies that have incredible modeling software out there. You are wasting your time and especially your money. No, more important, you are wasting your focus on recreating in the studio something that has been labored over for decades now. This is not just a few years that Line 6 has been going at it, or that Apple has been capturing drum sounds, or keyboard, or any company that is specializing in sampling instruments to sound real, right? To sound like the real thing. They have spent millions, potentially billions of dollars over the decades trying to get it so perfect that you can sit in a camper with your computer and no one will know that you didn't go to a studio, unless of course you do a video about it talking about how you record in your camper with GarageBand on a iMac on your tabletop when you're plugged in at an RV camp, right? There is a romantic notion that going to the studio is going to make you feel more inspired. And it was a fun experience, except that I always ended up walking away feeling frustrated, because you'd spend all that. And I recorded in the same studio with another guy that Green Day did their whole Dookie album. That album went multi-platinum, and it's the same studio. Yet when we got done with the recording, I was just like, why did we spend all that money and all that time? And I was there in the studio. I got my parts down in no time. And then I'm sitting around waiting, wasting my time, sitting around waiting for everybody else to get the right drum sounds, and get the mic in the right position, and warm his vocals up the right way, and get the right bass. He messed up, he's got to do the bass line again. Now that's with Pro Tools, that's with digital. I actually have worked in a studio in Hightstown, New Jersey, Skylab Studios, where it was 2-inch reel. And so if you messed up, you had to hold it. Okay, can you back the tape up to right before the chorus? So they'd back it up, and then they'd have to push play and listen to it. You mean here? Ooh, right there. Stop right there. So, I scared Rascal. Sorry, Rascal. Right? Because you're trying to get it done, right? You just messed up, and you don't want to lose the flow of what you were doing. Plus, the clock is ticking. Every second's more money. Okay, so hang on. I got to back it up again, and then get to that right point. Stop right there. All right, I'm going to punch you in right there. You ready? Go. And then you watch them, and you're like, is he going to punch at the right time? Is he going to hit it? And then, shoot, I got to play. Did you get it? Oh, no, I punched it at the wrong spot. Oh, man. All right, back it up again. Let's do it again. Nowadays, you assign the punch in, you clear out the space, and you just push play. And you do it over and over and over. It's just like, I messed it up. Click, click, go again. I messed it up. Do it again. I messed it up. Okay, do it. That's a take. That's a keeper. All right, let's hear it all together. Yeah, it works perfect. Seamless. With tape too, sometimes you have to take the time, take the tape out carefully, cut it, take out a piece, put in another piece, tape those pieces together, put it back in, ring the reels around. We're talking physical tape, big, thick stuff, magnetic tape, right? Bring it around. Okay, we just taped in, we punched in that little piece with tape, Scotch tape. Let's listen and see how it sounds. Oh man, you can hear it. Okay, we got it. All right, we got to try it again. We're going to take the tape out, try to do it again. So much time, so much money. And those reels, they're expensive, especially, everything's expensive now. It was expensive back then. And when I did my album on 2-inch reel, I think I used like 4 reels, 4 big, thick 2-inch reels.
Just with one finished reel product.
Now, and a lot of people say, analog, it's so warm and it's so, no, it's just, it depends on how you mix. It depends on what effect you're looking for, and if you've got that much money and time that you're just happy to go ahead, it's fun to be in the studio all day and all night, wasting, your time doing this stuff instead of just getting the damn song done, go on, do it, be inspired. But it was never inspiring to me, because one of the things this other fella talks about being in the studio too is that you hear everything. You practice a part at home and you practice in the rehearsal studio and you're like, oh man, I got this down, I'm ready. And then you get in the studio and you hear every little squeak of your finger moving. You hear yourself breathing in the vocal mic. Is that what I sound like? Oh God, I sound like Darth Vader. What the heck? Or you go to play a part and the tone just isn't what you're used to because you're in headphones now. And it doesn't feel the same. You're not next to the amp, and so there's no air moving between the two of you.
Or you hear the sound of the cord of the headphones.
Yeah, you hear it.
Or they get caught up on the strings.
Or that gets in the way and it starts to bump your hand and you get distracted by that. And so you mess up. You just mess up. All of a sudden, you're not as good as you thought you were, right? That's boy, that's really telling. I always say, you don't know a song until you play it live and mess up in front of a crowd, because then you will never let it happen again. The next level is you don't know a song until you can play it in the studio first take every time and not mess up at all. And I mean everything, and so Rick Beato was pointing out how a lot of amateurs don't realize what goes on in a studio and how much work there is to get the right tone. Well, yeah, but that's the old way of thinking. It's a lot easier now with the amp modeling and the stuff that's in all these computers. You don't need to do that. Now, the trick with modeling is if you're recording in a camper or at home, you're not working with the speakers and the air between the speaker and the string, right? The air that comes from those cones actually helps the string to ring. That's what they call feedback. But it isn't just feedback squealing. Often it's the note itself. It provides other overtones or harmonics of a note that you don't even necessarily realize until you put on a headset and you separate the speaker in an isolation booth, or you just plug into a computer and you're getting tones from the computer. So it changes the way you play. You have to play differently. That's a whole nother video, because each tone requires you to play differently too. If it's a crunch sound, you find yourself pulling the strings harder. If it's a really distorted tone, you find yourself playing the strings softer because it just comes through.
And then I would say the type of genre too would influence how you play it.
Oh yeah, well,
not
of course.
Just the tone, but the genre. Is it jazz
the
versus
beat,
rock versus...
right. And so all of those things play into what is the end result that you're looking for, especially in the studio. So Beato basically was explaining what a lot of folks don't realize, which is you're shaping sound. When it really comes down to it, if you condense down everything that they talk about in his video, you're shaping air, right? That's your job. And so when you're plugged in and you're not having the air to work with on a computer, you have to create the illusion that you are shaping air to the listener for that record. Now, for the other fella who talked about, well, you're taking on all these jobs if you're trying to record at home. Look at how many jobs that you're trying to do. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Because now you're the drummer, you're the bass player, the guitar player, you're the vocalist, you're the keyboard player, you're the percussion player, you're the producer, you're the executive producer, you're the sound engineer, you're the owner of the equipment, right? And you're, scheduling, you're all of these different jobs, right? So you really have to start from the ground up if you're going to record at home and expect to get a professional sounding recording. Now, there's all kinds of shortcuts to make that happen, like using guitar modeling, bass modeling, drum samples, because I guarantee you, every rock band you love from, I don't know, like the 1990s to now, or maybe just from 2000 to now, when they go in the studio, their drummer plays, and then the engineer and the producer use that track that he played over, and they put in drum samples exactly where he played. So it sounds like him playing on different drums. That's just industry standard. Why would they do that? Because it's so much easier than trying to get the perfect drum tone. It's so much easier to just use a drum sample that has already, for the last 50, 60 years, been shaped over time to be the perfect drum sound. And there are millions of different kits that are sampled that you can pull from, that you can mix and match and make a sound. And then you can even go into each drum sound and tweak it to sound differently without the hassle of a microphone, without the hassle of all the setup. All you want from your drummer is, what is his style? What is it that he's playing that makes your band so special? And then they layer over it the samples. So the same thing is true if you're recording at home. You don't even have to set up a drum set. All you have to do is pull in I guess they call it AI drum, right?
Something like that.
It'll play some generic beat. You pull those MIDI notes into a MIDI track, and then you go in and you move them and you reprogram the drum line to fit your song. You get close, get close to what you're looking for. Okay, this is kind of the beat I'm looking for, but I really want this double time here and this over here, and this kick has got to be on this off beat, and I'm going to do a 3/4 bar here, and then it's going to go back to 4/4, or we're going to do something crazy. We're going to go to 11/13 for 6 bars, and then we're going to go back to 3/4 waltz, right? Crazy stuff. So you have it lay out a general outline, then you pull all of that into a MIDI track and you program it yourself to be exactly what fits the song, which means now it's not an AI track, it's actually you programming the drums, which is exactly what a big studio does every day anyway. They take the track that the drummer from the band played, they pull it in, and they match MIDI notes over what he played. That's the truth. Go look it up. So why waste the time of going to a studio, and why not just do it at home for yourself? Now that means, obviously, you also have to do some studying on how to not just capture the sounds, but mix them and then compress them and fit them all so that they sound like a professional recording. Now, one of the tricks that I used to do is I would pull in one of my favorite songs, or a song that I wanted one of my songs to sound like, and look at it, because in GarageBand even, I'm sure, and I know Pro Tools has it because I used to have Pro Tools, they have an EQ, and so I would have the professional recording play through, and I could see exactly what the EQ of it looked like, what the kick drum EQ looked like, what the guitars looked like when they came in, what the vocals looked like when they came in, and I would leave that in as a reference track while I started mixing. This is how I got started finally getting my recordings to sound decent. So then I would start to add in the drums, I would add in the bass, I would add in the rhythm guitars, and I would keep referencing. I would turn it on and off by muting it on and off. I would play my track, and then I would play the professional track that I wanted to sound like. It's a different song, but it had the same tone that I was looking for. And I'd see, oh, the guitars in this professional track live in these frequencies, not where I've got them down here with too much low end. So I would roll low end off of the guitars, and then I would move emphasize the frequencies, or change the pickup that I was using, or change the amp that I was using until I got close to what they had. So, and there are literally thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of videos on YouTube about how to mix, even better than what I'm describing, because they'll show you what to do. So that's a good starting point, right? If you're trying to comprehend what Rick Beato was talking about in this other video that we saw, I was talking about when it comes to, just being able to make your recordings sound halfway decent, that you're proud of them, that you can look back years later and go, okay, it was a good song and I actually got a good recording out of it, and you know what, I'm glad that I captured that moment in time of what I was doing and where I was musically, because that's how you really have to look at it. When you make a recording, you can't look for perfection. You have to look for where you are now. Where are you as a musician? And sometimes you're not as far along as you think, but that's all right. Finish the recording, be proud of it, and then grow. Work on improving that particular part of what you do. So there you go. I mean, there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to, especially versus live tracks, backing tracks versus studio recordings that get released for streaming or for radio. And Rick Beato had some very valid points. A lot of guitar players don't take the time to kind of figure out their instrument. They just turn it on, turn it up loud, and start playing, and they think that's all you need. And sometimes it works. Sometimes they get lucky, but most of the time they don't. And you'll know it when you go to see them play live. You'll know it because you'll hear it. You'll be like, oh, why is that guitar so piercing? Why is it, oh, Oh, that's horrible.
Or the same tone for every song.
Every song is the same friggin' sound. We saw that young kid play in Louisville, right? Very talented young man. And he was playing the old Gibson SG. And it was so high-endy, midi, like 70s metalish. Oh, and it was the same tone over and over the whole time. And he could wail, don't get me wrong. He had chops, right? Playing all these famous solos and famous songs, cover songs. Not one original, but lots and lots of licks. Look what I can do. I can stand on my head and do this. I can do it behind my, all that stuff. But it was so exhausting on my ears. We had to leave. I couldn't take it. It was just the same for the whole time with no change, no difference. And me personally, I like variety when it comes to guitar, especially as a mid-range instrument that can really wear down your ears after a while. So, it's all personal preference too. Remember that, all right? And he was playing an honest-to-goodness Gibson SG into a Marshall half stack, which is the rig of the universe for a lot of guys, right? And it just was the same tone over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, I've heard you do those backflips like 3 or 4 times now. Is there anything else you can do? Can you make it sound a little bit different? Can you add some spice to what you're doing? But he's young, so give him time. He'll figure it out. Just like everybody who's watching this, if you even made it this far into the video, you'll figure it out. You'll go and watch more videos and you'll experiment with it. And one of the best things that the one fella said in the video is don't beat yourself up. Take your time, have fun with it, experiment with it. One of the most famous mistakes is that drum intro in the Air Tonight, Phil Collins. That was a mistake. Not the drum, what he played, but the engineer had left the compressor open all the way. And so it distorted the drums when he hit them the first time. But they kept it because it sounded so good.
Happy accident.
It was a happy Bob Ross accident.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you're experimenting with sounds, you get the coolest effect ever. I'll never forget that. Back in the early 90s, I recorded an original that sounded horrible, but I had compressed the whole recording so that every time the kick drum hit, it compressed the sound and brought it back up, and it did it rhythmically. And I actually had a fella who I admired as a drummer and as a sound engineer say to me, "How did you do that? That's so cool." And I said, "Well, I just really compressed it. I compressed it too much. I think it's too much." He's like, "Yeah, but it's so cool because it's..." Guess what dance music uses now? Heavy compression on certain tracks so that the whole thing goes... It's really cool effect. But it's just compression being too much compression. So that, in fact, is a great place to stop this video. The whole point was that compression was used to shape air in a way that was completely new, right? So if you're an artist, remember your job. Shape air. If you're a sound engineer, remember your job. Capture that moment. If you're in a recording studio, remember your job. Create that same experience on tape or on whatever electronic device you're recording on. That's the job. If you keep it simple that way, you'll be fine. Because then everything else that it takes to get you there, it doesn't matter what other, or it's short or long, or old style or new style. As long as you get to that as the end result, you're gonna be fine. Oh, security has decided that this video is finished. It is time to run a perimeter check again. All right, y'all, so thanks for tuning in. Please do us a huge favor if you haven't already. Like and subscribe, or send us a comment. Check out the links down below. We have CDs for sale. We are on tour nationally. It's kind of cool. It's a lot of fun, actually. Also, we have merch for sale, and everything helps. Every like, every comment, all the subscribers,
Shares.
Every purchase What?
shares if they
Oh
share
yeah,
stuff.
please share it. Yeah, all of that really helps. We're working hard to build this up so it could be something bigger and fun. In fact, TikTok says we're going to be famous by next week according to our statistics. So if we are, then we'll have a big party and you're invited. So make sure you tell all your friends. Even better, come to a live show, shake my hand, look me in the eye so I can tell you thank you for everything. Also, we have a few handmade t-shirts left at the shows and some emotional support beverage koozies that are AI and nanotechnology powered. So I'm looking forward to meeting you at a show, and until next time, thanks for tuning in.